Here we are live, maybe 1 minute too late, but better late than never. We are live on YouTube and we're live on the podcast guesting channel on Facebook. My name is September Smith, and as advertised, or maybe you've just stumbled upon this, I'm here today to talk about the 5 essential steps to strategic podcast guesting. And to do that, I'm going to be sharing my screen a bit to walk you through it. Now, the reason that I think that podcast guesting is so timely. It's something that we should really be looking at now as business owners in particular, or really anybody that needs to get their message out. Because right now, what most people don't realize is podcast guesting is an opportunity that's open to us. It's a time limited thing. It's not going to be out there forever. It's going to get saturated. The big businesses are eventually going to catch on to this. They're already catching on. The window's going to close. But for the time being, this is an opportunity that everyone should be thinking about leveraging. If you need to get your message out, if you need to rise above the competition, and you need to start getting bigger and bigger media and grow your profile and your business. I'm a podcaster myself, but I help people to take advantage of this because I am just so passionate about this as an opportunity for us. So let's get started. As I said, I'm September Smith. My company is, of course, that's the corporation I run it under, but the programs that I run are under podcast guesting because, like I said, that is my passion. And in addition, just this week, I found out that my podcast has just, at least for now, currently it's in the top 10 listening scale of podcasts. I'm really excited about that. And in addition to also being a podcaster, I also run a program called the Podcast Guest Fast Track. And as I said, this is to work with professionals and entrepreneurs to help them rapidly and strategically start using podcast guest appearances as prestigious anchor content for their business, positioning you as the go-to authority in your field, and also to start getting them elevated media exposure. As I said, I want people to start taking advantage of this. This is not going to last forever. So, about podcasting, the free media exposure of podcasts. Just yesterday, I was speaking at a summit, and one of my co-presenters at the summit was this whole bunch of amazing women, but one of them was a lawyer who spoke with me later, and she said to me she had no idea that there was such differences in the value of the content between social media and podcasting, and she had no idea it was media. We talked about the value of being a podcast guest, AKA, what I also want people to think about this is skip all the work, because having a podcast takes hundreds of hours a year. It's a lot of work. You can be a guest and get all the benefits with a couple of hours of effort. So I just wanted to dig into this a little bit today to let people know the difference. For any businesses for over the last couple of years that have been attempting to gain some kind of visibility with their clients and reach new audiences, we have been increasingly dependent on social media like Facebook to get our message out there. We have been, I think of it as feeding the beast, the insatiable beast of social media, with these increasing demands for content that we're almost on a treadmill creating, but for fewer and fewer views and for a diminishing return. In addition, the advertising costs for these platforms, Google, YouTube, and Facebook, have just about doubled in the last year, while the impact of it and the cost per click has diminished rapidly. So we've got to start thinking about a different way to do this. Again, let's take a look at how long your content lasts. This was a meme that I saw about a month ago. This really struck me. These figures are from 3 years ago, and I would venture that it's even worse now, but let's go with these figures from 3 years ago. When you put out content that you've taken ever long to create, this is the average time that lives, that people are going to see it. Of course, some a little longer if it goes viral, some a little less, but on average, it's 18 minutes for Twitter. It's 5 hours for Facebook. this stuff evaporates. All that content we work so hard to do stuff with and get it out there, it evaporates. Blog posts were found to have a life of about 2 years. Podcast in excess of 5 years. Podcast content outlasts them all. When you've got your content, that podcast content, on those platforms that it's broadcast from, your podcast content is carefully curated, unlike the melee, the free-for-all that is social media, where I don't know about you, but if I ever go and try to find something that I've done on somebody else's show, it's virtually impossible to find that content again. When it's on a podcast platform, if I look you up, I am finding all your stuff. It's all there curated with your bio, with all your links, all pointing back to your website, with your freebies in there. It is there. It's like a library of you and what you've done online. Also, those platforms are actively and more equitably promoting your stuff. Unlike social media where it's a pay-to-play model and your stuff gets throttled, those podcast platforms, for now, are wide open and nobody gets preferential treatment. If somebody looks you up or looks up your keywords and your information that you've put in your podcast guesting bio has those keywords in it, you're as likely to come up as Joe Rogan. So there's more of an equitable distribution of content. And also, on those podcast platforms, there is 250 million people who regularly go to those platforms strictly to consume. Unlike social media is a two-way thing where people are coming to look at your stuff, but more likely they're coming to write down how they're feeling right now or share pictures or whatever it is people do on social media. This is people coming just to listen to what you have to say, coming to find content like yours that they can sit down and listen to for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 50 minutes, because that's how podcast listeners interact with content. It's kind of like Netflix for audio. And that is the power of podcasts in business in 2021 and onward. Now, I like to use the phrase Netflix for audio because I think it gives people the idea. You sign in or you get on the platform. Of course, it's free if it's podcast. You get on the platform and you find programming that you want. It's curated. But it's not just one channel. If you've got your stuff on podcasts, think of it as having it on all the channels. These are video, to keep the analogy of audio. This is where your content shows up. You and your brand are being beamed off every one of these platforms when you have podcast content. In addition, there's a hierarchy to the content that we're putting out there. When we put our stuff on social media, that has the lowest visibility. Your blog posts on your website, social media, the videos we put on social media, including the lives, are pretty much at the bottom of the visibility pyramid. If you happen to guest blog on an influencer's site, that kind of boosts you up. You're riding on their credibility and their audience. With podcasts and video podcasts, they know that it has a much more elevated visibility for anybody who has content on there than these others. The pyramid goes upward, and as we can see, we've got podcasts, magazines, newspaper, features, TV. Podcasts are a great entree. It pops you right up to the middle of the pack. And then from there, you can leverage that to go upward. One thing that should be kept in mind is, while this can be a great entree into the whole idea of getting broadcast media, which keep in mind, broadcast media is one way pushed out. People don't just abandon podcasts. Right now, some of the biggest A-listers, the biggest celebrities, the biggest influencers on the planet are using podcast guesting because they know that podcasts, magazines, news features, and TV all play together in their media marketing plan. So this is something that you can be using. And if you know how to do it and you leverage it, you can pop yourself up to the middle and start going upwards and rising above your competition. Can you tell I'm a little bit passionate about this stuff? So when you think about it, you've got the potential for exposure, you've got the longevity of the content, and you've got the visibility. Podcast guesting and podcast content is something you really want to have for your business. It's anchor content. So blah, blah, blah. Moving past that, how does this all work? Well, it's because when you're a podcast guest, if you've done it right, this is what you want to shoot for. You have on display your expert interview skills, your expertise that you brought to that interview, also your personal presentation skills. People can go and they can, if it's video, they see it. If it's audio, they hear it. They see both for the consumer side, but also for somebody else who wants to maybe book you for other forms of media. They see how you roll. They see what it is to have you on their show or as part of their summit or their conference. Media samples, it gives you something to put in your one sheet for when you're wanting to get on speaking on stage or being part of a conference or being part of bigger events. And it also shows the world who are maybe thinking of booking you what you are like as a guest. So this is what's on display when you are able to get your content out and put yourself out there to the world on podcasts or even better, video podcasts. This doesn't happen by accident. You don't just wander onto a podcast and all these things fall into place. As you can see, this stuff takes strategy. You need a plan. And that is what my whole program is based on. Get that plan in place. And here are the way I do it, the 5 strategic steps. The first thing is your strategic brand story. Nothing happens until we know what it is. Your strategic brand story is. That's your messaging, your talking points. It's the thing you want to be known for. And that's the goal here. If we want people to see your expertise on display, they have to consistently see you talking about the same thing. Sure, you can vary it a little bit depending on who you're talking to, but basically, you don't want to confuse people. You want, every time they find you, you want them to think, okay, I know what she can do for me. And every time they listen to you, it deepens their understanding and their respect for your expertise. So you need that brand story. The next thing you need, your target shows. 99% and more of the podcasts out there are not where you should be. So when somebody says to you, hey, do you want to be on my podcast? Do not say yes right away. Make sure you know what kind of shows you need to be on and have your list, your top 10 hit list of target shows that you want to be on. Then once you've decided the shows that you want to be on, how are you going to get booked? Most people, and that's speaking from my own experience and from the experience of other podcasters, because podcasters know podcasters, we compare notes. Most people do not know how to pitch a show. And 90% of the people who pitch shows never hear back because they didn't know how to pitch it. So you need to have a strategy for how you're going to pitch and how that pitch is going to get you booked. Once you get booked, you want to know exactly what you need to do for that perfect appearance. Part of that is the tech, the equipment, and if it's a video podcast, your camera, how you're supposed to look on screen, and how you use your equipment effectively. The other part of that whole perfect appearance thing is, how do you use your authentic voice? A lot of people use that term. What's your authentic voice? Who are you when you're on those shows? And how do you tell that brand story in a way that's natural and comfortable and really attractive for the listeners or the viewers, as I said, if it's video? So that whole thing combines with the equipment and your authentic story, your authentic voice applied to your brand story for your perfect appearance. And the result of that, once the podcast episode drops, what you're going to do with it. And this is the place that most people make the biggest mistake. They do nothing with it. I could go on and on. This drives every podcaster out there will tell you that makes them absolutely crazy. You have a guest on and they do nothing with it. If you were to pay, let me get up on my soapbox for a minute. If you were to pay a company to go into a studio and you be interviewed and be positioned as the authority and be allowed to speak for 30 minutes in your zone of genius, respectfully listened to and given questions that help tell your story, and that was produced as audio or video, that would cost you thousands of dollars. what you're getting for free when you're a podcast guest, assuming you do it right and you're on the right show, is creating content that literally is worth thousands of dollars. If you do nothing with that, you have just wasted an enormous opportunity. This was it's like throwing away money. So how to make it pay, your marketing plan, super important. As I said, that's what most people miss. And coincidentally, all of that is available and summarized in my guide, The Strategic Podcast Guest Appearances for PR, Profit, and Social Proof, blah, blah, blah. It's 5 steps here with some details in it about what you need to put in place. The link for that is right there. Feel free to grab that. So what's involved? I want to go through this in terms of what we talked about earlier. The whole thing of your expert interview skills on display, your expertise on display, your personal presentation skills, your media sample, and your reputation as a guest. When your signature brand story is in place, first of all, let's talk about what it is. As I stated before, your signature brand story is that strategically crafted messaging. This is goal driven. We have to think about, from my business perspective, what do I need to create? What does this content need to say so that when my ideal audience sees it or hears it on a podcast or a video podcast, they are getting the message they need to get, they are feeling the way I want them to feel, and they are doing what it is I want to do, which is probably coming and either working with you or telling somebody about you. That's what we have to craft with your brand story. And why you need it? If you don't have a brand story, first of all, there's a very little chance that when you actually get on one of these shows, if you haven't done it before, what you have to keep in mind is not every host has the same agenda that you have. It's their show. They have certain things they want to talk about. And they might come up with questions or topics that you're thinking, that has nothing to do with me. Why are they asking me this question? This is not what I wanted to talk about. If you don't have a brand story, you can end off way over in left field talking about something like, I don't know, climate change or the pandemic or your dog or your breakfast. That first of all, you should never be talking about. And second of all, is really damaging to you if people find it. First, they don't see you as that go-to authority that we want them to see you as. And it confuses them. Who is this person? Why is she talking about this? Or like, if they're looking for your expertise, that's all you want them to hear about. So that's why you need your story, so you can control the narrative. So you have some ability to keep that episode on track. What happens if you don't have it? Disastrous podcast episodes at worst. I have seen examples where it was actually a really, really high level marketing guru who I had fortunately heard of in another number of podcasts. And I love this guy. He had even bought some of his books. He ended up on a podcast. And even though he had his brand story, the host was doing everything he could to take the narrative in a whole different place. So if he hadn't had that brand story, that episode, which it was a high level host, so a lot of people were going to see that, would totally misrepresent him. So if you don't have your brand story, you can't keep on track. And in addition, a little intel from a host point of view, if anybody's trying to interview a guest and they don't really have a story, it's really hard to interview them. I don't know what questions to ask you. I don't know where you want to go with this. And you don't seem prepared and know what you want to talk about. So as a host, I'm going to wrap that interview up shortly. I'm not going to hang around talking to you. And it's not going to be a great episode. And I'm probably not going to promote it. But if you know what you're talking about and you've got a really polished story, I'm going to probably hang on the mic longer with you. It's going to be a better episode and it's going to get better promotion and it'll stand you in good stead because when people find it, they're going to be like, wow, she's amazing. That's what happens if you don't have it. How I help? That is the absolute first step that I take with my clients is going through and we figured that out. I have 15 years experience doing just this from a past career as an instructional designer where nothing gets started. No matter how big the process, you do not start moving ahead with any plans until you know what's the goal of this and what's the story we need to tell. What do we need people by the end of this project? How have we changed their minds? What do we want them walking away thinking about? That's how I help you. We figure out your brand story. Once you get that all done, then we've got your target shows. Now that we know what we want to talk about, now we know, okay, what's the best setting for this? You need to find the shows that are the best stage for your message. There's a process to this. There is 2.3 million podcast shows out there right now. Most of them are not where you want to be. There are a whole lot of criteria you need to take into account. And why you need this is because you do not want to end up on the wrong show. Even when I apply this strategy, I have ended up in some cases where I thought, okay, I did not see that coming. I don't think I did my homework well enough. You need to do a minimum of research to make sure you know everything about your target shows, where it goes out to, who their audience is, who their host is, who the host is connected to, how the host rolls, how the host sounds, how they interact with their guests, what they do with the shows after, how they market it. All that's important information that you need to know for you to make the decision of whether or not you're going on that show. Because if you don't have it, you will end up on the wrong show. And that stuff does not disappear. Podcast episodes, like that slide way back said, will be out there for 5 years. And people will stumble upon, if you've got luck like mine, people will stumble upon that really awful podcast episode that you just wished would disappear. It's not going to disappear. It'll be out there forever. So you want to make sure you're on the right shows. How I help? I have a strategy and a system, a whole process. I'm a former mechanical engineer. I got a process. I got a process for how you go through that and analyze and vet those shows and get it down so you've got your top 10 target list of shows that you want to be on. And again, with those target shows, you want to make sure that your expert interview skills will be on display, that your expertise will be on display because it's the right show for you and they want to hear about your expertise, and that you'll have a great interaction with the host. And then your personal presentation skills are there, makes for great media samples, and your reputation as a guest will be stellar because people will go, wow, she was really, really great to have on the show and she was great to listen to. So that's your target shows. How you get booked, what it is. It's all about pitching. You probably have heard about pitching before. As I said, not everybody knows how to pitch a show. It's really important that you know. You don't want to waste opportunities. Make sure you pitch it right the first time. Why you need this? If you don't know how to pitch, you don't get booked. What happens if you don't have it? You're not going to get on the shows you need to get on. And how I help? I have a process. I have a strategy and templates for you to figure out your pitch for getting booked. The ideal appearance, as I said before, that's all about how you sound on the mic, how you look on the video camera, if it's a video podcast, but also how you are within yourself when you're being interviewed, how you are when you're fielding those questions and you're interacting with the host, your authentic voice, as some people call it, and how you're going to naturally tell that story, that brand story. That was step one. Why you need it? Because hosts have been known, and I have to say I'm one of them, hosts have been known to actually cancel recordings of podcasts when their guests show up with equipment that is just inadequate. Hosts take pride in their show, and we do not want to have you on our show if your equipment is inadequate and it's going to be really, really poor quality audio, because that is one of the most important things with podcasts. People will turn off podcasts if the audio is not good. So you have to know the equipment that you need. And you also have to sound engaging for people to want to listen to you. That's what happens if you don't have it. You'll get canceled. How I help? I'm all over the tech. I've been doing this stuff since 2005. And with the authentic voice, again, that's something that I go through in my program. Not only do I help you find your authentic voice, we also practice what it is, because I'm a podcast host. I interview people. I've been told I'm a pretty good interviewer. I work with my clients to help them get comfortable with being interviewed and how to really come off so that you end up having an ideal appearance, something that you're proud of and you'd be glad to share. The last thing, and as I said, this is one of the most overlooked things in people's podcast guesting. What are you going to do with it when it comes out? What this is, you need to have an idea. What is my process? So that when that podcast episode drops, you have a plan and you don't have to start from scratch going, okay, what is this? What should I do with it? You know that every time an episode drops, I have this process. I use this, I repurpose this for this, I create it with this, I put this on my website, I link it to this, I do this, I do that, I push it out on these platforms. And then every couple of weeks after that, I link it here and there. Everybody needs a different marketing plan. But if you know what your marketing plan is, that will save you hours and hours every time you've been on a show. So that's what this is, why you need it, to save yourself time. And also, if you use a VA, which a lot of people do, you can use your marketing plan to just pass it over to your VA as a statement of process, an SOP, so that they know, okay, every time she hands me this, this is what I need to do. It's your guide to how you're going to proceed with this. What happens if you don't have it? It just takes a whole lot of time figuring out how you're going to repurpose it. And you don't have a whole lot of time to waste, I'm assuming, if you're a business person. It might not get promoted as well as it could be. So knowing how you're going to do that is just going to save you a ton of time. How I help? I got a plan. I help you figure out what is the unique marketing plan for you, a process that you can use with every one of your episodes that drops, and a contingency plan if it's an extra big or an extra special one, how you're going to kind of boost that more than the other ones. And again, this all comes back to these 5 steps. Your signature brand story, your target shows, your gift book strategy, perfect appearance, and then how to make it pay marketing plan. My solutions. These amazing women have agreed to join me in the Podcast Guest Fast Track. Oh, I need to move that out of there. I can't move it out of there. These gals are coming in with me. Tony Caruso, Stacey Crawford, and Jill Lublin are all bringing their expertise to my Podcast Guest Fast Track program, which starts September 4th. And you're going to learn everything that I've covered. But in addition to that, we're going to then see how does this play with what we've created, our expertise on display, our interview skills, our media reel, all those things. How does it then help us get into television, speaking on the stage, bigger publicity? So these gals are going to be with me for that. And it's the Podcast Guest Fast Track. As I said, that's starting right after Labor Day. Before Labor Day, one of my guests that will be in my program, Stacey Crawford, and I are going to be doing a live webinar all about how podcast appearances and TV appearances can kind of play together symbiotically in your media marketing plan. So make sure you get a link to that. I'm not sure if we've got the link to that. That one, I think you need to register via Eventbrite. We'll put the link in the comments. So if you think that podcast guesting is something that you want to do, and you want to do it with strategy so that the content that you create through your guesting is going to show you in the light that you know you need people to see you in, and you want to do it fast and you want to do it right, let's have a chat, because that is my mission, helping people take these 5 essential steps and get really strategic so that they can start taking advantage of this literally free. When you know what you're doing, it's an amazing free media exposure opportunity for you and your business that is going to totally explode your profile, your audience, your network, and your business. You're going to up level to a whole other level. So you can either direct message me either on LinkedIn or on Facebook, or you can book a call I think we have the link to that. Coming up, a link. Do we have a link to that? There we go. You can book a call there. 2 people playing with a direct message me or book a call. Or you can also find information at the landing page for this fast track program. And at this point, boy, I wrapped that up in 30 minutes. Pretty good, hey? At this point, let's see if anybody's got any questions. Can we open up the chat and see what we've got? That would be you, Rain? Okay. So, what are some of the questions? Is it best to have a press kit of some sort when pitching? Yes, it definitely is best to have a press kit. Not everybody is gonna look at it that way. Part of your pitch is also going to be how you contact those shows, the producers or the hosts themselves. What you say when you do, it's just kind of psychologically strategic how you're going to be talking to them. You always have to put yourself in terms of what's in it for them. You gotta tell them why you'd be an amazing guest and why it's gonna be great for their show to have you on there. But also, for some people, the press kit, if they don't look at it, fine. If they do, if they are interested in you and they want to go deeper, a press kit is a really cool thing that they can just easily dive into and see what you've been on before, see that you've got a professional headshot. That's really important. Um, just because, in case you weren't aware, you need a professional headshot. It's got to be high quality and it's got to be square in case they want to use your headshot on the thumbnail for the episode, which again is free promotion. There's your face and your name beaming off their thumbnail on your episode. Not every show does. Some hosts just keep their own picture on it. I put my guest picture on the thumbnails. So your press kit will supply all of that. So it's a good idea. If you want to be pitching, use your press kit. And what's another question? Excellent, September. Will you help us determine what shows are best? Yes, yes, absolutely. I am really overly picky about shows that I go on, but also shows that I recommend people go on. When we go through the process of finding the shows for you, then we start vetting them and we get really fussy about it because the show that you go on is going to determine how you look once that episode comes out. And you want to make sure that it sounds great, it looks great, that you've got a good vibe with the host, that they kind of stay on topic, and that they're some ego, maybe. I don't know. For some reason, some hosts, it's all about them. I mean, I guess it's their show, whatever, do your thing. But you need to know that. If you're gonna I call it, being kind of just like a prop on the stage. You're just like a chair off to the side of the stage that they occasionally refer to. You wanna be on a show that is gonna let you have center stage. And as anybody that's been on my show knows or any listen to any of my episodes knows, my show, She's All That, is all about showcasing my guests. Not every show is. So you wanna be really fussy about what you choose and make sure you feel confident that this is a show that's going to end up showing you in the best light. Still, it could go sideways, which is why you need to know your story so that you're best prepared, armed for that. But yeah, I definitely help people determine what is the best show for you. And I will go through it with you and make sure that your top 10 list contains nothing but, as safe as we can determine, quality shows that are going to work for you and your business. And we had Cindy. Thank you, September. Always great information. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Cindy. That's very kind of you. Do we have any questions? Press kit. And it looks like that's what we've got for questions. So we're all good. And if that is the case, at just 35 minutes, we can wrap this up. Feel free to message me. I'll get Cindy off the screen here just in case she's like, yeah, I'm on the screen. So, as I said, this is all the 5 essential steps. This is what we're covering in my podcast guest fast track program. If you're interested, I would love to help you really start taking advantage of this. As one thing that I had mentioned yesterday, which kind of blew some minds, your ramp up time from the time you first start talking to a show to the time that that show drops can be anywhere from 2 to 6 months. So if you're thinking of taking advantage of this, you got to start now. Not every show takes 6 months. The latest show that I was just on, and it was a show that was really good for my business, that was advantageous for me to be on, it was 6 months from the time we first talked about it till the show dropped just last Sunday. So if you want to start working on this and you want this working for your business now, you got to start now. Like I said, you can direct message me or you can book a call to see how we can help you, or go to the Fast Track Podcast Guest Fast Track page and see if this is something that might be of interest to you. That's about all for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I've really enjoyed being here talking about this thing because it's my jam, man. Anyways, talk to you soon.